Going on, guys? And today we'll be talking about the San Antonio Spurs and who will the Spurs be drafting. Everyone's like, they're going to get rid of Jokic Pirtle. I'm not so sure. So right now, I had going at number 8, Dyson Daniels, and before that we had at 7, I really completely forgot who we had going at 7, Jeremy Soham. My apology. So that leaves Benedict Mathurin, Johnny Davis, and Jalen Duren as the 3 guys I have potentially going to the Spurs. Johnny Davis out of Wisconsin, Jalen Duren out of Memphis, and Benedict Mathurin out of Arizona. Let's talk about who do I think is going to go to the San Antonio Spurs at number 9. I want to hear your thoughts down below in the comment section. If you're the Spurs, who would you draft and why? And also we'll talk about the Spurs' other picks. The Spurs also have the 20th pick and the 25th pick. So those are also worth mentioning because, come on now, it's the NBA draft season and it's upon us. And I think that's, honestly one of the most fun times, okay? So let's talk about it. I want to hear your thoughts down below. Who would you guys draft and why? Let's get right into it. So first off, the Spurs are in the lottery for the 3rd straight year in a row. Despite taking wings in the previous 2 stints with Devin Vassell in 2020, Joshua Primo in 2021, there's room for a wing who can get buckets. Johnny Davis, Big Ten Player of the Year, consensus All-American, had 330 points games, averaged nearly 20 points a game last year. Davis obviously wasn't his best towards the end of the season and in the NCAA tournament because of an ankle injury, but he still averaged 6.5 free throw attempts per game. The San Antonio Spurs struggled mightily getting to the free throw line, finishing last in the NBA as a team with free throw attempts rate. And Devin Vassell is a 3-and-D guy. Joshua Primo is a shooter who has ball handling and playmaking ability. And All-Star, All-NBA Dejounte Murray is the primary playmaker and guy who should have been most improved player of the year. He's downhill, and they need a downhill player like Johnny Davis. And it also gives them insurance if 2018 first-round guard Lonnie Walker leaves in restricted free agency, which I doubt. Now, another guy that they could look at is Benedict Mathurin. Benedict Mathurin is a guy who, he's a guy some might argue is a high-risk, high-upside player. But I think he's a guy that fits the long, athletic, defensive-minded player that they like. Yes, Sam Vecini has said Mathurin's solid defensively, but he's more known for his offensive game, which is predicated on attacks on the rim, 3-level scoring, and an arsenal of shots. Again, I could also see them trading for somebody right here, but I really just think when you look at that, at 9, he'd be a good guy. Another guy is obviously A.J. Griffin, who I didn't mention earlier, but he's a guy who, if the Spurs want a 6'6" wing who has almost a 7-foot wingspan, yes, he was a poor defender, but he's a guy who can get better defensively, okay, in my opinion. And right now, if I'm looking at this right now, at the 9th overall pick, there's also Jalen Duren, and I really like Jalen Duren. He's your typical rim-running, shot-blocking, 6'11" center with a 7'5" wingspan. He physically looks like an NBA player, despite being the youngest player in the draft, arguably. He's a chiseled 245-pound, and he averaged 12 points, 8 rebounds, and 2 blocks per game while shooting 60% from the field, and mainly just dunking and shooting 5 feet within the basket. And despite that, the fact that he didn't have a point guard who could offer him much help setting up this year. And look, I know I'm not totally buying Duren's switchability defensively, but there's some scouts who look at him and think he could be, similar to Nick Claxton, but, a top 10 center with some DeAndre Jordan in him. So if I'm right here at 9, I'm taking Johnny Davis as the Spurs. So I think the Spurs should take Johnny Davis. He's a guy who's an on-ball and off-ball defensively very good, and I think he'll just fit in perfectly and give some insurance for Lonnie Walker. But now at 20, the San Antonio Spurs, on my mock draft, I think if you look at right here, it gets interesting because there's a few players that they could go. And for me, I think for them, they got to look at a guy like Patrick Baldwin Jr. He's not a certainty to stay in the draft, and some are willing to entirely overlook a disaster of a freshman season at Milwaukee. Others might not. But at 20 overall, Baldwin averaged 12 points and 6 rebounds while shooting 34% from the field and 26% from 3. That's terrible. But there's a lot that can be chalked up to what you want. This guy isn't a shot creator, but he ended up being forced to being a shot creator. And he's a guy who would very much benefit playing off of Dejounte Murray and Joshua Primo and Trey Jones as a guy who will have a point guard who can create shots for him, and he can use his pristine shooting ability and mechanics to hit those open looks. He didn't really have any clean opportunities this year. Baldwin took just 7 uncontested three-pointers this season in 11 games. That's a very low number that exemplifies how much Milwaukee's point guard struggled to set up Patrick Baldwin. And I think there's plenty of other scouts who are going to tell you they're going to be interested in this guy who was a top 5 recruit in the country. And honestly, if he stays in the draft at 20 overall, Patrick Baldwin's a great flyer who can be a power forward for them, allowing Keldon Johnson to play small forward, then Devin Vassell shooting guard, and point guard Dejounte Murray, Jovic Poeltl at center. Now, they have another pick at 25. At 25, Nikola Jovic. Yes, I have them going for Nikola Jovic at 25. The 6'10", 18-year-old out of Mega. Okay, this man is playing for Mega. I believe it's a EuroLeague team, but he's from Serbia. He's averaged 12 points per game this year as a teenager in the Adriatic League, while shooting 36% from 3, averaged 3.5 assists. His value lies with his feel, his basketball IQ, and his instincts and his skill set. Jovic sees the floor like a point forward, has the workable mechanics to point that it's easy to buy into him becoming an impact player on the defensive end, or not defensive end, on the offensive end from day one. And yes, there's some questions about his defense, but he's big, smart enough that teams that will have faith that he can make it work. Yes, he's not a crazy athlete, but look, the Spurs have had success getting players like this. And Nikola Jovic, his floor is Nemanja Bjelica, who is still a very serviceable player, but his ceiling, I think, is to be a better Dario Saric, a taller, a little bit more athletic Dario Saric. So my 3 picks are Johnny Davis at 9, at 20 they take Patrick Baldwin, and at 25 they take Nikola Jovic. What do you guys think of that? I think it'd be a great pickup for the Spurs. Let me hear your thoughts down below.